This is an audio presentation by Mosaic Church Brussels.
We are in our series in Genesis. We're kind of kicking it off. We'll get through a whole host of stories. Many of the stories you might know. Many might be a little bit surprising and interesting, particularly if you haven't been through either the book of Genesis, or you wouldn't consider yourself a follower of Jesus yet. Some of these might be known, some of them might be completely unknown. And it's wonderful to be able to explore those together as a church. And I'd love to, time is maybe going to catch us, but I wanted to leave open some time for Q&A. So for questions and answers after this session. Maybe Jan will do the same next week. I don't know. We'll see. No pressure, Jan. But so if there's stuff that comes up and you think, hey, I was just wondering, we'll give our best stab at an answer. I'll do my best at an answer. There might be one or two in the room that will be able to help with those answers. I am not the fountain of all knowledge. Jesus alone is, and his word is. If it's a question that we can get back to next week, then I'll either do it on the Sunday as a bit of a feedback, or send through a proper answer in video format or written format on the WhatsApp group, stuff like that. So, okay, so if there's stuff that comes up, feel free to jot it down, and then we can hopefully come back to it. Wunderbar. Well, we're in a book called Genesis, which means beginnings. It's in Greek. The original in Hebrew, the books of the Bible are named after their the first couple of words in the of the book, and so in Hebrew it has a different name. It's like Bitesh or something. Who knows it? Sorry, that sounds it. Bereshit. That's right, exactly. And in the Greek it's Genesis, right? The beginnings of things, and it's interesting in how God wants his people to understand reality itself. Okay? That's what the foundation of the book is about for us in many ways. Traditionally, Genesis is attributed to Moses, so the Moses of the Exodus, and we understand that he is writing or writes Genesis either as just after the Exodus or during the Exodus period. So we're talking about sort of 1400 BC, right before Jesus. Somewhere there is when this book is written by Moses, likely in the period during the wilderness, those kind of 40 years. He had a lot of time to write and spend time with God. And that is an important piece of context when we read the book of Genesis, because Genesis is not written to kind of curious philosophers or modern scientists. It's written to a redeemed, a freshly purchased people, but a disorientated people, a lost people, and a people who don't know who they are. And they've just been brought out of slavery, and they're asking, hey, who is this God who has brought us out of slavery? What has he brought us into? What is the world around us like? What does it mean to be human? Can we trust this God? All sorts of great questions that probably are very relevant to us as well. And Genesis isn't trying to satisfy every curiosity, every question that we might have about the world, but it is, in fact, certainly in my opinion and in many others' opinions, it's trying to form faith. It is answering the questions that God's people most needed answering at the time. And the first thing it does wonderfully, particularly in chapter 1, is not tell us how broken the world is. We kind of start there, and the world is broken, right? And Jesus is the answer. Well, let's not skip too quickly to that point. He is the answer. We know that. But it starts off with a world the way it was meant to be in many ways. Most of us don't wake up in the morning and wonder, hey, what kind of world do we live in? But we answer that question in the way that we live our lives at a day-to-day level. So if you believe that the world is fragile, okay, is almost always breaking, you will be tempted to live anxiously. If you believe the world is hostile, angry towards you, you will live defensively. If you believe the world is random, just random atoms, random chance colliding into one another, the temptation is that we live frantic, busy, just constantly trying to find meaning wherever we can find it. We're designed to find meaning. So even in the chaos of uncertainty and randomness, we'll try and chase after everything we can. And if you believe that the world is never really finished, you live busy and tired. The story that our culture tells us is that the world is pretty much held together by your and my hard work and our productivity and our busyness and our constant effort. I mean, if we stopped doing what we do, if we stopped pushing, everything will fall apart. And it's into that kind of a world that the Bible opens with this very different claim. And before Scripture tells us what went wrong with the world, before it tells us what needs fixing, before it tells us even what God has called us to do as part of His world, it tells us what this world is like, what kind of world this is. Wonderfully, we don't start with a crisis, it begins with creation. Not with panic, but with purpose. This is a world that moves from chaos to order to rest, which is a wonderful story for us who are starting the new year and we're thinking, man, it's already so chaotic. Where do we go from here? So let's begin where the Bible begins, in Genesis chapter 1, verse 1 and 2. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was over the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters. I think it's important to start at recognizing that Genesis is not written to us. It is written for us, but it was not written to us. And there's a difference there. Genesis is for all people at all times of history, but it was written to a specific people at a specific time, at a specific place in history. And all other generations like ourselves need to work hard at trying to discern the deeper meaning, the deeper context, understand what the writer, Moses, and indeed God, who's the great author, through Moses, is wanting to tell the modern reader. So before we go further, I want to pause at the question of, well, how did the ancient people understand their world? Because that helps us to sort of work through Genesis in a helpful way. If you look at ancient Egyptian illustrations and the ancient Israelite cosmology literally is their understanding of the heavens and the earth. And you know, it's not a new thing. We didn't develop cosmology when satellites and telescopes were developed. Every culture has had an idea and a sense of what the world is like. And what you notice on both of those is that there is a solid world. Okay, the Egyptians had the earth pictured like this. The Israelites had the earth pictured like that, and that there was something solid over the top of them, a dome. You've got the sun god Ra, who's kind of covering over the earth and the peoples of the earth. And there you've got the firmament, you've got the dome that separates the waters from the waters below. Both cultures had the sense that there was chaos and waters above the sky, and there was chaos and waters beneath the ground. The Israelites had the columns of the earth kind of underneath the ground, and that's where Leviathan, the great beasts of the deep, they lived down there. So interestingly, there is a lot of similarity between these kind of pictures, but the Egyptians had it all based around the gods, where you'll notice the Israelites don't, and it's because of what we're going to go through in Genesis. The sea always represented danger, darkness, chaos. So when we read that the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters, to the Israelites, that meant God was at work, even in the places of darkness and chaos. So already there's a hint at peace, which is greater than the Egyptian cosmology. We'll keep coming back to that throughout. Chaos was always close to the gods of the nations, to the people of the nations. And what you see here is, this is not modern science, right? This is interesting, fun pictures. And we sort of chuckle, we laugh, we smile at it. But this was the world, the way the ancients understood it. And Genesis, interestingly, does not come and try and correct their view of cosmology. God doesn't want to somehow give them a scientifically accurate picture of the world. God comes into the way that they already understood the world, and he brings a theological truth into it, which I find interesting. So as you look at these images, notice that Genesis isn't redrawing. It is telling Israel and us who rules the universe. Genesis is not a textbook. Genesis is a theology book. Now, there are interesting things we can take out of it. But because it is theology, it doesn't only give us information. I love that it gives us a confidence as well. The same reason that it was written to the Israelites, to give them a confidence of their place in the world and the God who rules and reigns over it. So too it does for us. And it takes the world as the ancients experienced it, the sea, the sky, the land, the lights, as we will read, and it declares that none of them are divine. Okay, the sea is not divine, the land is not divine, sky is not divine, but none of it is chaotic either. And none of it is beyond God's command and control. Confidence. So within the Christian world, and there might be people on different kind of spectrums here as well this morning, people generally hold to a variation of one of the four positions about the creation story. There are those who would say the young earth, so we're talking about young earth, literal creationism. The classic position there is God created the world in 6 days, about 6,000 years ago. That's it. Okay? And there are ways to make sense of space and distance and the age of the earth and dinosaurs and all that sort of thing that fits within that way of reading the scriptures. A second way is an older earth or a day-age creationism. view, which sort of has the view that every day potentially is an age or a period of time, that it's speaking more of an age that God did things in a sequenced, ordered way, but it wasn't 24-hour periods, the way that we would understand a day today, which then makes, they try and make sense of distance in space. If we think the universe is 13.7 billion years old and light, speed of light, etc., and all that sort of, they try and make sense of it like that. Then there are those who sit with a literary framework. Genesis is understood then to be a book that gives us theology, literal, or a flow of the narrative of the story of God, rather than the detail and the specifics of, therefore, this is exactly how things happened, that generally God is trying to teach us something rather than give us scientific evidences for things. And then there are those who would say that there's evolutionary creationism, which would say God uses the mechanics of evolution and guides them towards the processes that brings about life and development and so on. It is important to understand that holding these positions is not life and death. Okay? A lot of Christians find these positions a hill to die on, and for them it's very, very important. And for you, it might be really, really important. I think the next slide says what unites Christians across these views is probably the important thing to hold on to. God is the creator of all things. Creation is intentional, not accidental, which in my opinion takes out the theistic evolutionary route, but okay, that's me. Humanity is unique and bears the image of God. That creation is good, but is now broken. And that God is moving creation towards redemption, towards fixing, towards making all things new and rest. Okay, that is what all Christians who hold any of these views about creation, we all agree on those things. That is, I think, the essentials of the story. You're welcome to disagree on that point. If you want to ask more, the Q&A is there for it. Let's keep moving. So with that in mind, okay, let's step back into the ancient world to listen to how Genesis tells the story. In the ancient world, creation stories usually began with violence. Okay, so the story of Ra and the Egyptian gods, heck of a lot of violence going on. Okay, a lot of fighting. Chaos is kind of fought back, is subdued by bloodshed. And the humanity was created really as an afterthought to the gods of the nations around the Israelites. They were seen as slaves, servants, kind of to meet the needs of the gods. If you think of even the gods of the Greeks, there's a lot of sense of, hey, you were created to serve the gods rather than them to serve you in a sense. Genesis offers a very radically different view and vision. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. There's no rivalry, there's no struggle, there's no fear, there's no need for human intervention, no human help required. No help, no advice required. We're so good at advice. The earth is described in this section, formless and void. In the Greek, in the Hebrew, tohu wa bohu. Formless and void. Tohu wa bohu. And it's not evil, it's not broken, it's just unfinished. It's without shape, without form, and it is empty. It has not been filled yet. And God is described as always and as already there, hovering, present. This world doesn't begin like a battlefield, like the nations of Egypt. It begins as a building site. Creation isn't born out of some anxiety that the gods have, that they need to create humanity to feed their egos, but out of this divine intention and purpose. God purposed creation the way it is. So let's continue in verse 3 to verse 13. And God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. And God saw that the light was good. And God separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening, and there was morning the first day. That pattern is quite important. There was evening, and there was morning on the first day. And God said, "Let there be an expanse in the midst of the water, and let it separate the waters from the waters." And God made the expanse and separated the waters that were under the expanse of the sky, the waters under the sky, from the waters that were above the expanse. And it was so. And God called the expanse heaven. And there was evening and there was morning the second day. And God said, "Let the waters under the heavens be gathered together in one place, and let the dry land appear." And it was so. God called the dry land earth, and the waters that were gathered together he called seas. And God saw that it was good. And God said, "Let the earth sprout vegetation, plants yielding seed, and fruit trees bearing fruit, in which there is their seed, each according to its kind on the earth." And it was so. The earth brought forth vegetation, plants yielding seed according to their own kinds, and trees bearing fruit, in which is their seed, and each according to their kind. And God saw that it was good. And it was the evening, and there was morning on the third day. Wow. And we hear these words, and we notice what God is doing. His first acts are not unhurried. They are ordered, paced, planned. Light is separated from darkness. Time becomes meaningful. We have day and night. Sky is separated from the seas. Space kind of becomes stable. The air becomes stable. Land emerges from the waters. And life becomes possible because we've got this flourishing vegetation. And in the ancient world, where seas always represented danger and disorder, God sets boundaries, which is just so kind of him. And in a world where darkness is feared, God names it, and then he limits it. He limits its power, limits its ability to bring anxiety. This is not God imposing control. I love the fact that it's God being kind to a people in the ancient world when their cosmology, their world looked and felt the way that it did. And order here is not oppressive, right? Often we think, oh, orders, rules, don't tell me what to do. No, these boundaries are not limitations, they are gifts that help life to flourish. And God is creating a world that can be relied upon. A world where life does not fight to survive. A world where chaos does not get the final word. And so on days 1 to 3, we see God answering the tohu question, the formlessness. God is forming, God is shaping. He's bringing structure before he brings fullness. He first orders the world and only then begins to fill it. So we go to verse 14 to 31. And God said, "Let there be lights in the expanse of the heavens to separate the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons, and for days and years, and let them be lights in the expanse of the heavens to give light upon the earth. And it was so. And God made the two great lights, the greater light to rule the day and the lesser light to rule the night and the stars. And God set them in the expanse of the heavens to give light on the earth, to rule over the day and over the night, and to separate the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening and there was morning on the fourth day. God said, let the waters swarm with the swarms of living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth across the expanse of the heavens. So God created the great sea creatures and every living creature that moves, within which the waters swarm, according to their kinds, and every winged bird according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. God blessed them, saying, be fruitful and multiply and fill, right? Fill the waters in the sea, and let birds multiply on the earth. And there was evening and there was morning on the fifth day. And God said, let the earth, where are we going to? 31. God said, let the earth bring forth living creatures according to their kinds, livestock, creeping things, and beasts of the earth according to their kind. And it was so. And God made the beasts of the earth according to their kind, and the livestock according to their kinds, and everything that creeps on the ground, and according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. Then God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heavens, and over the livestock, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. Next week, we're going to look at male and female creation. And God blessed them. God said to them, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea and the birds of the heavens and every living thing that moves on the earth. And God said, behold, I've given you every plant yielding seed that is on the face of the earth, and every tree with its seed in its fruit. You shall have them for food. And to every beast of the earth, and to every bird of the heavens, and to everything that creeps on the earth, everything that has the breath of life, I've given every green plant for food. And it was so. And God saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was very good. And there was evening, there was morning on the sixth day. Whew, bit of a mouthful. It's worth just going through it. So by the end of this, you've gone through the entire book of Genesis 1, and hopefully the whole book of Genesis. Now, God fills what he has formed, and he deals with the bohu part of the problem, the emptiness. And you might have noticed this in the past when you've studied Genesis, or if you've studied Genesis, but you'll notice that day 1 and day 4 go together. Day 2 and day 5 go together. Day 3 and day 6 go together. Lights are placed to govern time. Creatures fill the skies and the seas. Animals roam the land. And finally, humanity, the crown of creation, is created. And the sun and moon that were worshipped as gods in the ancient world are just simply called lights. Such a non-event. It's almost as if Moses and God is going, listen guys, you worship them, they're just lights. They rule nothing by divine power. They serve the day and the night by God's command. And this is one of the reasons why I read Genesis partly as a theological account, rather than necessarily as a scientific textbook, because God, through Moses, is deliberately undermining the gods of the nations. Hey, you worship the sun, the moon, the stars. They weren't even created until day 4. They aren't even given names. They are not even worthy of worship. Human beings, by contrast, are not accidental. They are not an afterthought. They are made in the image of God. Which brought to me a question when I was working through this. When Jesus comes to earth, does he take on our form, or do we look the way we do because that's the shape God takes when he comes in flesh? Interesting question, answer, isn't it? What to think about. But mankind is given authority, not autonomy, but authority. And mankind rules under God, with God, participating, co-laboring, not instead of him. And importantly, work flows from identity and not towards it. Isn't that wonderful? Right? Mankind is told to rule, to reign, to subdue, to work out of the identity that God has already given them, not for it. And 7 times in the chapter, God calls creation good, and then finally, very good. Before humanity achieves anything, does anything, before it proves anything, before it contributes anything, God delights in them. He has joy in them, and he calls it very good. What a deep, beautiful theological truth to rest in. Imagine if you've just fled for your life out of Egypt, and you read this, you hear this being told to you. That's good news for us today as well. Creation is not morally neutral. It's positive. It's positively good. God does not wait to see how we perform before he calls the world very good. Worth comes before work. Delight comes before duty. It also helps to say that calling creation good doesn't mean that everything was perfect. It's not. Perfection is going to come on the other side of recreation. When God comes, makes all things new, new heavens, new earth, then it'll be perfect. And the English word can be unhelpful in some ways. He's saying it's good and saying it's very good, but it is not perfect by any stretch yet. God orders and he fills the world, and then he commissions humanity to continue that work of ordering and filling, to subdue the earth, which is kind of a word that means to take hold of it, to tame it, to place it under safe and wise management. And this doesn't mean that kind of God starts and we finish. Okay, I think it's safe to say that he does a little bit more than we do. You know, he puts the stars in the sky and creates mountains. We make our bed in the morning, all right? Like, it's a completely different spectrum of working with God. But he does give us stuff to do. And that work is valuable. And it's not about earning worth. It flows out of our worth. It flows out of God's joy in his people. Our final section is 3 verses in Genesis 2. Thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all the hosts of them. And on the 7th day, God finished his work that he had done, and he rested on the 7th day from his work that he had done. So God blessed the 7th day and made it holy, because on it God rested from all his work that he had done in creation. And only now do we really reach the climax of the creation story. And the climax is rest, which is surprising. You'd think, oh, climax, the climax is doing stuff. No, the climax, the high note is God resting. And he's resting not because he's tired. Again, this is a nye to the gods of the nations around them, that Moses and God are just sort of poking fun at them. The gods of the nations get tired and they lack stuff. And that's why they need rest. God is not tired and God does not lack. And we see how important this is, again, when we compare it to the Egyptian gods, this idea of rest. In Egyptian cosmology, this is the next image, my boy. What you've got is the sun god Ra, who kind of looks after the sky. And during the day, or every morning, he's born. And then during the day, he goes over in his boat across the waters above the sky. And he has to fight off the chaos and keep the chaos away. And by the time he gets to evening, he's so exhausted that he needs to rest. And then he needs to return down to the bottom of the earth, where he's then looked after by the other gods of the nations, of the other Egyptian gods. And they keep everything in order by the amount of fighting that they do. And Ra has to go and fight in the shadows and is again in the morning, if all things go well, is reborn again. Okay? Exhausting. Exhausting. The universe survives because the gods never stop fighting, according to the Egyptian and many of the other stories of the gods of the nations. But in Genesis, our God is shown quite differently, quite clearly. The Egyptian gods cannot stop working. In Genesis, the universe is safe because God can stop working. And he has. Not in terms of the way that he daily sustains us. We know that that's not what we're talking about. It's his work in creation, holding the laws of physics and gravity and the laws of thermodynamics in place. Right? God made them, they are there, and God can rest. The God of Israel does not rest because he's worn out. He rests because his work is complete and the world is good. Nighttime is not a moment of chaos or of threat. Darkness has been named and boundaries have been placed around it. The universe doesn't wobble in anxiety when God rests. No, he is not asleep from exhaustion. He holds the ordered world and everything that he has filled it with in his good hands, and it is safe. It's also striking that the seventh day has no ending. Remember, we read, and there was the morning and the evening of the first day, second day, third day. Remember that pattern? All we read is on the seventh day, God rested. God's rest remains open. Humanity's first full day is not lived in striving, not in a God who's actively working, but actually in a God who is at rest. And this tells us something profound. It tells us that the world is stable enough, safe enough, good enough for God to rest in, and for us to rest in it with our God. And up until this point, Genesis has been telling us the kind of world that God has made. A world ordered, filled, and complete enough for him to rest in. But that doesn't quite sound like the world that we experience. For us, often rest no longer comes easily. The book of Hebrews in the New Testament largely focuses on this invitation and encouragement to make sure that we do enter the rest of God with Jesus. And don't miss out on it, either by sin or by trying to work for our own rest, which is the great danger. In the world around us, people have often stopped trusting God's finished work. And people began living as though nothing is truly finished and truly done and truly good. People turned rest into hard work and striving and effort. They turned work into identity. Hey, what's the first question we ask when you meet someone new? What do you do? Right? Ooh, identity. That's how we identify ourselves so often. Man, we need to work hard at not making that our second question. Achievement we turn into worth. So God again, wonderfully, does what only God can do. And Jesus takes up the work that we could never finish. The work of obedience every day according to the laws of God. And He bears the weight that we were never meant to carry. And on the cross, He echoes the language of creation itself when He says, "It is finished." Just as God rested because creation was complete, we can rest now because redemption, God's saving work through Jesus Christ, is complete. We do not rest because we have not done enough. We rest because He has done enough, and it is finished. And the Bible begins by telling us what kind of world this is, the world that we live in and that we inhabit. Not one held together by our efforts or by the sustained work that we, in our jobs and in our day-to-day running of our lives, try and build for ourselves. But it's a life and a world that is sustained by a loving God who finished His work and who invites us in Christ to rest as well.
This is an audio presentation by Mosaic Church Brussels.